The second skill that we're going to cover in Unit 3, Photoshop Basic Skills, is going to be using the selection tools. There's 3 different types of selection tools on the toolbar in Photoshop and Photopea. So you want to consider the Marquee tools, which are the shape selecting tools, the lasso tools, which there's 3 different types we'll go through in a little bit here, and there is also our quick selecting tools, which there are 2 options for as well. So let's go ahead and try those. So once again on our website, we'll go to Unit 3, Photoshop Basics, and then we're going to go to Photoshop Practice Basic Tools. We've now completed skill 1, so we're going to head down to skill number 2, which is our selection tools. And we're going to start by saving this fox. So right click on the image, save image as. Again, please make sure you know where you're saving it to. I'm going to call it selection tools and save. So starting with Photoshop again, I'm going to go to Open, and on my desktop I'm finding that image that I named Selection Tools. And here is my fox. Remember, if you need to zoom in, you can always hit Command plus if you're on a Mac or Control plus if you're on a PC or Chromebook, just so you can see a little bit better here. So we're going to work with our different selection tools today. Now, the first set of selection tools are our Marquee tools. Unless you're selecting something that is a specific shape, you really don't need to use these. So as you can see, if I were to drag this rectangle selection tool, it's going to create a selection in the path that I drag. If I wanted to move that selection, I could go to my Move tool and I could move it to another place or onto another image. If I end up not liking something that I did, I can go to Edit, Undo Move. And if I want to deselect, I can always go back to my Marquee tool and just click once anywhere on the screen. It'll deselect your selection. So a better option for this fox would be using one of our lasso tools. The regular lasso tool, I could trace around the outside of an object. If you have a steady hand, this could possibly work well for you. There is the polygonal lasso tool. So if you have something that has really sharp edges, like a window or door that you're cutting out, you could cut it out in very straight edges. Notice I'm clicking, letting go as I am creating this path. If I don't like what I'm doing, I can always double click, it'll make the selection, double click again, and it'll deselect everything with our lasso tools as well. The last one, which is going to be the best option of the 3 for this fox, is the magnetic lasso tool. This one is going to stick to opposite values within the image that I'm tracing. So I'm going to click once, but right in between the 2 opposite values, so right on his ear there is perfect. And you can see without even clicking, it's automatically reading the image and using the Adobe technology to be able to figure out where those edges are. You can also click if you'd like to. So every so often I can click as I go around the outside. Definitely the best option, but I might mess up my path, and that's fine. You can always hit the delete button on your keyboard and it will release the last anchor point that you dropped. It's also okay if you mess up a little bit. I'm going to leave this on purpose because we'll be able to fix it later. So I'll just quickly go around the outside edge here to finish up the fox. I'm clicking every so often when I get to an important spot. Again, you don't necessarily have to, but I just think you have a little bit more control that way. And once I get back to the starting point, I want to click on that starting anchor point. So right at the top of the ear is where I started. I'm going to click right there, and notice now I have my path selected with the blinking lines. But I did mess up. It's not perfect. So if I want to be able to fix my selection, you can go to the mask tool, which is down here on the bottom left-hand corner of your toolbar. Once I click that, your screen is going to turn red. And I always say, red means stop. You cannot do anything else besides fix your selection in this mode. You need to turn it back off by clicking on it again before you can do anything else in your design. So I'm going to turn that back on so I can fix my selection. And in order to fix it, I'm going to use my eraser tool. Okay, it looks like a little eraser, little gray and white eraser. And I'm going to pay attention to that the two values I have selected at the bottom are white and black. So if I have white selected on top and I start coloring with my eraser, it's going to take away from my design. If I flip that with the little arrow key down here, it's going to now add to my design. So I could zoom in as close as I want to and make my design pixel perfect. Going in here with the eraser tool. Remember from before, if you use your bracket keys on your keyboard, you can adjust the size of your eraser. You can also adjust it at the size up at the top, but it's just easier while you're on the go to use those bracket keys. You can see I can go in here and make it exactly perfect on the edges. So once I have that the way I want to, again, you need to turn that mask off. And at that point, I would be able to take my move tool and move the entire fox to another page, or maybe delete the background behind it. Okay, let's talk about our last couple selection tools here. So we're going to have our quick selection tool and our magic wand tool. There's also going to be the new object selection tool, which it uses the Adobe Sensei technology to determine what object you're actually trying to select. So let's start with the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool, if you click and drag, it's going to select everything that's the same color and value as you move around your path. Okay, and then the other one, the magic wand, with one single click, it's going to select everything of that same color or that same value. So it does a really good job on an image that has a solid color background to select that background. But notice, it is the background that is selected. It's not the actual fox that's selected. You can tell because not only are those little flashing lines around the outside of the fox, but they're also on the outside edge of your screen here. So you do want to pay attention. Yes, I can turn my mask on if I wanted to and go in and fix that edge, but I want to make sure my fox is selected before I do anything with it. So in this case, I'm going to go up to select and down to inverse. Now notice that the lines are not on the outside of my page and instead they're just around my fox. That way I know the fox is selected and not my background. Okay, and let's try that last one, the object selection tool. I'm going to drag over the fox and see if Adobe is smart enough to grab just what I wanted. And look at, it's almost perfect, very similar to what we got with the magic wand, except I don't have to go to select inverse because you can see that the edges are right around the fox image that I wanted. Now I'm going to demonstrate the same thing we just did in Photoshop and Photopea for those of you using Photopea. So I'm again going File, Open, going to my desktop where I saved my image and choosing the fox which I named Selection Tools and open him up. Command plus or Control plus makes him bigger or smaller just like in Photoshop. Okay, and I'm actually going to go out one more so I can see a little bit better. Now I have the same selection tools here. I have my marquee tools, although we only have 2 options. In Photoshop there were 4 different shape options, but it works the same way where I can grab and select a shape and move it with my move tool or go to edit, undo if I mess up. The marquee tool once again is a great option to deselect very easily. The lasso tools are all the same where I have the regular, I can freehand draw around the outside of my object. I have my polygonal tool where I can click and create those sharp straight edges. And finally I have my magnetic lasso tool that is going to stick to the outside edge where I can click every so often if I choose, or it will automatically drop anchor points. I have a feeling that it drops a little bit less of anchor points than Photoshop does as you're going around the outside, so I would recommend dropping your own on here. I think it makes a little bit stronger of a design. I'm going to finish and go through. Again, guys, if you mess up and go off the edge, you can hit the delete key and it'll unselect those last anchor points that you dropped. It lets them go, it releases them. Okay, and I will purposely just go off here so I can adjust it with my mask tool afterwards. Okay, so here's my selection, and I can use that same mask we used in Photoshop. This time I am going to zoom in a little bit closer and use my eraser tool, which looks almost exactly the same. Notice if it's set to gray or white on here. So gray is letting me get rid of the red. And if I flip-flop those, the little arrow, they're in the middle, not at the top on this one. It's going to then add back. Okay, and I will turn off that selection. Now the nice thing, if you notice, that when I was in my mask tool, it actually shows me what I've changed on here. It's actually a little bit nicer than Photoshop in that sense, because it's telling me what I added to my selection or took away versus all keeping it that same value of red. Okay, so that is the lasso tools in Photopea, and if I want to move this fox, right, the whole thing will move now. All right, and our last one on here is going to have the same object selection, quick selection, and magic wand. Again, the object selection was added recently as Photoshop did. So the quick selection tool is going to let me drag around the outside. Now, because you are online using Photopea, that one's going to move a little bit slow. So that might not be the best, quickest option for you to use as you're selecting your design. The magic wand works very well. Again, that's going to select a solid color. Let me just make sure I have that deselected first. Okay, so again, a little bit slow for it to load, but this time, since I'm only selecting one color, one value, it grabs it pretty nicely. Actually, it did a better job than Photoshop did of not going into the fox's face here. Okay, and then our last one, object selection. Let's see how that does in comparison to Photoshop. Okay, this one is about the same, where it still did take away a little bit of the fox's face, but we can go back and fix that if we wanted to. For the second lesson, try this. We're going to be using the magnetic lasso tool to cut out the dog in the image below, and then we're going to fix the edges using the mask with the eraser tool, and then finally we're going to drag the dog image, once we have it selected, onto this forest background. So we're gonna have to save both of these pictures this time. So save image as, I'm just going to call him dog. And again, on my desktop, I know where I'm saving it. Save image as. I'm gonna call this one trees. Okay, and notice that we are going to be turning in this try this, every try this that we do, you'll be submitting on Google Classroom. So this one's going to be under the assignment Photoshop Tools, Skill 2, Selection Tools. So in Photoshop, I'm going to open up both the dog, and I'm also going to go to File, Open, and open up those trees as well. Remember from before that in Photoshop and in Photopea, there are two tabs that are created when you open multiple images. Photoshop, you do have the benefit of dragging one of those tabs down if you would like to see both screens at once for whatever reason. And I'm going to grab that magnetic lasso tool to be able to go around the outside of the dog. Slowly clicking around the edges. Remember, if you mess up, you can always hit the delete key, but you can fix it afterwards. We're going to use that mask tool again. So turn on your mask, Control plus or Command plus if you're on a Mac, Using your eraser tool, you can use the brackets to make it bigger or smaller to get your detail. You can also flip back to white or black to make your selection or deselect. Okay, so once I had it exactly perfect, I'm going to turn off that mask, use my arrow key or move tool, and then I'm going to drag and drop it onto my other page. If you want to resize any image that you drag over, it's going to be Command T, that's free transform. Remember, in Photoshop we do not hold down the Shift key and it keeps it exactly proportionate. And I can place that dog in the scene so that it's in and amongst the trees. Okay, so let's do the same thing in Photopea. Okay, notice in Photopea that when I have both of my images open, they are on separate tabs. However, you can't drag those tabs down on your screen. It just doesn't work. So I am going to select it right here. I'm gonna Command plus to go in, and I'm using that magnetic lasso tool to again click around the outside edges. Okay, once I'm done with my selection, I can adjust it using the mask tool and my eraser, same thing. If I need to flip-flop between the gray and the white, I can use those arrow keys down below. Once I have my edges as perfect as I want, I'm going to click the mask tool one more time, grab my move tool, and this time, again, I can't pull my tab down, so I just have to drag. If it doesn't let you drag to the other tab, you can also go to Edit, Cut, go to your other tab manually, and go to Edit, Paste. Okay, and then we have to go to Edit, Free Transform to do the same resize. Now in this one we do have to hold Shift down, unlike Photoshop where you don't want to hold Shift to keep it proportionate. In Photopea, Shift does keep it proportionate. So I'm going to scale it down, click my move tool when I have it in place, and we are done. Always save as a JPEG in both programs when you are completely done.